Okay, so really quickly, I'm just going to kind of go through some of the technical aspects here. If I can get through these first couple of slides just to show you, there's my contact information. If you need have any questions, or you want to talk about any of the information we talk about today, you want to discuss this template further, you can give me a call, you can shoot me an email at your convenience. Just letting you know also, it's hosted by Invasive Plant Control with a lot of help from Ed Maps and Chuck Bargeron down at the University of Georgia. And today we're also being co-hosted by the Garden Club of Nashville, who is a member of the Garden Club of America. And they've had a big part in putting this whole project together. During the presentation today, everyone's microphones will be muted. That's going to help reduce background noise. There's more than 100 people on today, so it's hard to field too many questions, but we will certainly make an attempt to do that through some of the chat buttons there. Due to the size of the audience, we're not going to be able to answer everyone's, but if you look at your control box, you can click on the little arrows there to make it maximize it or minimize it, and you'll have the different options you have for asking questions. If I don't get to them during the talk, I will respond to them afterwards. This is also being recorded today, so you will be able to see this presentation at your convenience online by going to our website, invasiveplantcontrol.com. And then one last housekeeping thing, there's always potential for technology failure. If for some reason your sound goes out, the video goes out, or maybe my electricity goes off, or the internet goes off at the office, I will record this and I will put it up online, so you can always go to invasiveplantcontrol.com and click on IPC Outreach, and that'll take you to the recorded webinars. So let's jump into it then. So I guess the question I've been asking for many years, and I think a lot of people have, is who are we talking to here? Who are we preaching to? Who are we teaching about invasive plants? And over the years, I think it's become very evident that we've been doing a really good job of teaching invasive species issues to the professionals in the field, when we really should be thinking about how are we going to teach these concepts to the general public? How are we going to reach out to these folks standing in front of Old Faithful at Yellowstone and explain to them that that grass next to them might not be native? It might have detrimental effects on the environment around them. How are we going to do that? So we decided to consider this weed wrangle idea and taking some of this community kind of outreach a little bit further and trying to get into the groups that aren't normally out there. If you look at the top line here and you see the title of this article, Allelopathy and Exotic Plant Invasion, from Molecules and Genes to Species Interactions. Now that sounds really interesting to a lot of the people that work professionally in this field. But the people we really need to reach for long-term success in this field, they're going to turn the page as soon as they see that. So we have to find a way to make this glamorous. We have to find a way to make this something that someone wants to actually understand and try to be involved with. It's kind of intrinsic versus instrumental value. It's easy to say, there's a Burmese python, we know it's bad, it's invasive, let's get it out of the Florida Everglades. It's a big snake that's sitting there and it scares people, so it's very easy for people to grab onto that. It's not necessarily as easy to say, look at this bush honeysuckle. It's in the middle of our forests, because most people, a lot of people will look at that and just say, well, it's green, it's good, what's wrong with it? So we have to find those reasons, and we have to bring people together in ways that maybe we haven't thought about before. We have to not reach out to the scientists, but we have to reach out to this group, the middle schoolers, the grade schoolers, the high schoolers, and the homeowners and people that don't deal with the environment every day, but we want to teach them something that becomes ingrained in their culture. So maybe we're talking about value of property. Maybe we're talking about value of wildlife. But there are a lot of reasons why we can do this and how we can do this. We just have to start doing it. I love this quote from Ansel Adams. There's nothing worse than a sharp image of a fuzzy concept. And I think that's exactly where we are in our field today. It's very clear. It's very clear that the invasives are there. We see them. But the concept is fuzzy to a lot of people, and we haven't really explained it well. So we need to reach out to a different group. We need to get away from just the professional side. And I think a lot of folks across the country are doing this now. but let's take it to the next level and figure out how we can reach out to them. One of my favorite things lately that I've kind of been reading and trying to understand is the idea of using art over argument. Art can be described as a lot of things, but Paul Harvey made a really good article about this a while back. I encourage you to look it up. You know, one example he says is nobody could have persuaded a generation of Americans to produce a baby boom, yet Shirley Temple movies made every couple want to have one. So using the art of movies and cinematography, people are able to influence others and the decisions they make. They used the same example for Bambi when it was out. Deer hunting was a $5 million industry before the movie came out. The year after, it was a $1 million industry. What can we do in the invasive species field to use art to help with that argument theory? One example that I really like is these folks up in Cleveland. You can see them here taking out bush honeysuckle, privet, buckthorn, other species that were up there. And this is an art project that someone put together. And they're putting up these reflectors that you can see the site here at night after they did the removal, and the reflectors that are on there that would stay up, and you can see 4,800 stems on a third of an acre across from, I believe, is a boardwalk looking out at the site. And it was set up that way so people could kind of see the number of invasives that are actually under there. When you look at that during the day and you see a big green wall, it's not that impressive. When you look at it like this, it's kind of obvious, and it's just another way someone's using art to emphasize why invasives might be bad. And there's a lot of really neat examples of that I'd love to get into with you someday. Kind of the theory we were going off of for the weed wrangle and building these community events is similar to what the folks out in Bend, Oregon have been doing for a while, called Let's Pull Together. And when you get off this call, take a look at letspulltogether.com and check out what they've been doing over the years. But it's noxious weed education, but you can see on the bottom, cleverly disguised as a party at the park. So it's a different kind of art. It's entertainment. It's getting people involved with hands-on activities. So they use education. They have the Control Noxious Weed wagon that they bring for education. They have a lot of neat signage. They'll put out bands. They'll have a lot of different things that pull people in, not just for the invasives, but for other reasons. So that kind of brought us, when I got a call from some folks at the Garden Club of Nashville saying, let's put together an event here. Let's try to get something going in the Nashville area. And they were very clever and came up with this Weed Wrangle Nashville logo. They got the name. They've trademarked it so that you can take out the Nashville, add your city in there, add your location. But trying to get a movement going across the country here called Weed Wrangle that will be what I explained today. And hopefully this template will help you take you in that direction to where you can start using this format of art, if you want to call it that, to help with the invasive species movement. Now, I've taken the CWMA, if you're not familiar with that, it's a cooperative weed management area. They have a model that they put together. It's kind of a cookbook. And they have a lot of points that you kind of go along the way, and you can build your CWMA. Well, this is, I think, is the ground level of something like that, because this is really getting that community involved. And you could actually build something like the Weed Wrangle into a CWMA or a SISMA someday. So I've taken that and I've kind of used the model and tweaked it a little bit for the Weed Wrangle model. The first thing that we did was identify the issue, obviously invasive species. The second is to develop a strategic plan. And these are going to be very simple and easy to do, and I really encourage people across the country to work on all these steps. So developing that strategic plan was as simple as, let's do this partnership to form this Weed Wrangle. Let's get volunteers that can learn, practice, and begin the habit of maintaining an area free of invasive plants. So if they do it in our parks, maybe they'll do it in their backyards as well. And let's not just make it a pulling event, but let's think about over the course of the years how we can turn this into a fun and entertaining event outside of the forest so that people want to come back for multiple reasons, but the take-home message is the invasive plants message they can take home with them. The next step is to select a leader or champion. In this case, the Garden Club of Nashville stepped up and came up with the idea. They're a member of the Garden Club of America. Now, I'll say this. It's really important, I think, to understand how important it is to get a group like the Garden Club of America involved. We've for years been trying to reach out to a group like this to get them interested in this topic, because they certainly take it back to the community better than most groups will. They come out of just about every neighborhood in this country. And when you have people that are so influential and have such great abilities to take their skills back into the community and take this topic with them, I think it's a great partner to have. So having the Garden Club of Nashville be the leader of this has been a really big step, I believe. And I encourage you to do the same with your communities. Establish a steering committee, very simple. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. In this case, there's a few of us that got together and we just met a few times, got the ideas together, and we just started moving with it. The next step is organizing the event. Myself with Invasive Plant Control, IPC, the Garden Club of Nashville, we started working together with some people from the parks and a couple other places and just got this thing organized. Casey McAllister and Elizabeth Lamar, who I believe are on the call today, kudos to you two for all the great work you've done. They've been the real leaders of this. They've gone out and they found the funding for this, and they helped the Garden Club of Nashville be a big leader in this. But by having that leader, we're able to take the next step forward. So within your own communities, whether it's the person that's standing on the line right now listening to this talk, or it's someone there that can champion this effort, I strongly encourage you to find that one person that's willing to step up, because it really only takes one to get the whole thing rolling. And you'll have a group like us here to help you at this point, because we'll have created the model and implemented it by the end of this week, actually. So we selected a name. They creatively came up with this name. They put the Wrangle logo on there, and now we've got the website. We've got everything set up with it. Through this whole process of building this event, we're encouraging partnering with the Garden Club of America. We encourage you to use the Wrangle name and with the Garden Club of America sponsored events. But if you're not able to do that and you already have something, you just want to use the concept, we certainly encourage that as well. I think if we can build it with one name, we'll actually have a little bit better leverage as we build this across the country. And if we can all stick to the Wrangle, we'll be able to really get some momentum in a lot of different ways. But there's no holding anyone back in terms of if you have another name, you have another group, have another event that you want to do the same format with, by all means jump into that. We also have a website that we've set up through EdMaps. They've helped put that together for us. And every time we get a new city or a new partner, we're going to basically add a little web page for that group so that we can have a whole group of weed wrangles across the country that people can come and visit and look at and see how it works, get the templates, work with each other in building these things. Casey and Elizabeth went out and got T-shirts made. They've got orange vests for the crew leaders with the Weed Wrangle name across the back of it. Certainly, you're welcome to buy one of our Got Weeds T-shirts. Got the event name on the back with the date and everything. From that point forward, so now we had the name, it's time to establish the geographic boundaries. In this case, I believe it was kind of part of the grant proposal they were writing to get the funding to do this, that they created the geographic boundaries of the Nashville area, the greater Nashville area. But this certainly doesn't have to be limited to that. I'll say that throughout this process, we've gotten calls from people way outside of Nashville asking if they could do the same thing or they could be a part of it. In this case, it's because as part of the grant proposal, we're sticking with this one area, trying to keep it manageable. But certainly by next year, in 2016, I'm hoping we'll have expanded that boundary tremendously. So we establish our geographic boundaries, identify potential partners and build support, and determine common goals. So, we know we want to deal with natural areas management as well as private land management, because we want to get the homeowners involved. So we want to take our primary focus in those areas, to be invasive species issues. So we went out and found those partners, and we said, well, let's think about how we could do this. And a few cities I've heard about over the years, they've considered the idea of building a greenway that goes entirely around the city. So you almost have a circle of parks around the city. So we kind of thought Nashville was kind of constructed that way many years ago, and you can kind of see that green layer going around. So let's try to find partners that can make a circle around Nashville. So we went out, and I have to say pretty easily we're able to find a lot of partners that jumped in on this. And you can see the names of them there, from Owls Hill Nature Center to state parks, the Nashville Zoo, which has been a great partner in this, Shelby Bottoms, Bells Bend, another municipal park, watershed associations, we have Greenways of Nashville, we have universities, we have botanical gardens. Really tried to spread it out. And you can see this map of Nashville, and you can kind of see where they're all located. probably could get another area up in the north there, but you can also see up in the north that there's the interstate going through there, and there's not as much green space in that one stretch. So I think we actually made a pretty good circle around Nashville with these different partners. You can see not just the partners that we're doing the work on the ground with for the weed wrangle, but the other ones that have jumped in, including the Cumberland River Compact, who works with many of these different partners on different projects. Belmont University sponsoring some events. So we have the partners that have the on-the-ground teams that are going to be working on Saturday, but we also have the partners that are helping in other ways. Now I wanted to kind of highlight, again, the importance of having a group like the Garden Club. All of the partners are important, and anyone you can get to help in this respect is going to be great. But going back to that, who are we trying to teach to right now? One really important partner we have is Lipscomb University. They have 115 middle school students signed up for their weed wrangle. They're going to be doing their part of it on Thursday during the school day. They're going to get 115 people out to, I think, 3 different sites. So all of those 115 kids are going to learn about this at an age where they can take it through the rest of their life. It's important to grab people for your event where you can bring in the younger generation. It's important to bring in the garden clubs that can get out and about in all the communities around town and have some real influence. It's also important to get the native plant nurseries and the other nurseries involved. Grow Wild is a big part of what we're doing this year as well, and that's the native plant nursery here in Nashville area. We also wanted to make sure we partnered with common events. So part of the reasoning we have at this time of year, although it's been warm and sunny for the last few Februaries, it's icy and cold this February, but we're hoping for a good day Saturday. But we try to do common events, so we scheduled the Weed Wrangle event for the week of Invasive Species Awareness Week up in D.C. During Invasive Species Awareness Week, you have a lot of these webinars, you have a lot of things that are going on up there, but it's a time of year when a lot of people around the country can go to D.C., speak with their representatives, and kind of go on the Hill and try to get their congressmen and their senators interested in this issue and try to get funding directed towards their states. So it's important for us to work with them. We also put together this website for our partners, partnering with the University of Georgia and Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, able to create the web page for each partner group participating in the Weed Wrangle, and we'll update that frequently with before and after pictures, group photos, the work that's been done, and then we'll just build on this from year to year. So part of the partnership also includes, since it's during the week of Invasive Species Awareness Week, we try to fill up our days with events. So today we have webinars. Tomorrow we'll be having an opening event at Belmont University. And that'll be a nice talk to the students at Belmont University and hopefully a lot of local citizens that are interested in the topic. On Thursday, we're going to have a hill forest, an old growth forest here in Nashville, social, where we're going to have people coming out and taking a hike through the forest, looking at invasives, talking about the forest here. On the next day, we're partnering with the Tennessee Exotic Pest Plant Council. That social is part of this as well. But the Tennessee Exotic Pest Plant Council is also having their conference this week. So as part of that planning committee, we strategically put the TENEPSI conference in the middle of National Invasive Species Awareness Week, right next to the Weed Wrangle. So we're all working together as partners in order to bring people to all these events and really try to step up what we can do for the community. And you can see they're going to have a good conference on Friday. And of course on Saturday, all these partners are going to come together for the Weed Wrangle. And you can see here the web page, and you can go to weedwrangle.org and check it out, and you can see all the events and everything I'm showing you. And if you just click on one of these sites, it'll take you to that site, some information about that particular site, how to register, and when they register, they automatically get an email that sends all the information they need to show up on Saturday. And you can see the example of it. So that's how we got the partners, and we got a nice group of partners together, which obviously is a very important component of this. But how are we financing this? Honestly, I think we could probably be financing this pretty easily without much of a budget at all. I would let Casey and Elizabeth argue that, but I think if we just found one small donor, we could get through with a lot of the stuff we're doing, and even do it without that if we had to, because of all the partners stepping up and doing things on their end. But in this case, the Garden Club of Nashville and these two went out and they found a grant called Partners for Plants, which is through the Garden Club of America. I'd encourage you to look into these opportunities in your own city and your own state. But being a member of the Garden Club of America, the Garden Club of Nashville is able to apply for this grant and receive it. The Partners for Plant projects include things like monitoring protection of rare, endangered, and medicinal plants, propagation and replanting of native plants, and, as I highlight there, the removal of invasive plants, which we were focused on. The Weed Wrangle budget for here in Nashville, initially a $3,000 grant awarded by the Partners for Plants program, and then the Garden Club of Nashville matched that. I'll show you here where some of that money went as we go along. A good portion of it went to publicity, where we're having some folks out there actually doing some publicity for us. Total budget was $6,000. I think very manageable for an event this size. So next step, we know our budget, we know our partners, we know what we want to do. We better get a training together. So we know that the big project we're going to have is a weed pull. We're going to have all the sites participate on Saturday. That'll be the final event after a week full of other events. But the Weed Wrangle will be that pull and that time for the community to get together and do something at the zoo and all the different sites. So we decided we better hold a training meeting. So with site visits included, where I went to different sites, or having the leaders come to one place, we've been able to get everyone together and basically estimate the number of volunteers everyone needs during these site visits or the meetings. How many crew leaders are going to be on the site? What kind of support are we all going to give each other? Casey and Elizabeth were great about getting signs together, so they have Weed Wrangle signs they handed out. We were able to give uprooters, which is the new weed wrench, uprooters to all of the sites, so they have tools that they can use, and it's part of the donation from the Garden Club to them. And then identify a manageable area for success while we're on those sites. So really important, if you're going to do this and you're going to put this group together, make sure that you pick an area where these volunteers can actually get something done. This would be an ineffective site. Don't have them cutting and treating an ailanthus this big. This is a real picture from Shenandoah area, but obviously volunteers aren't going to work on something like this. So make sure, if the group that you're working with or the partner you're working with hasn't done this before, go out to their site, help them pick plants, infestation levels, and tools that are appropriate for a volunteer base. Maybe it's cutting euonymus off the base of trees. Pick things that you can do in different types of weather too, because if it's going to rain and be cold, they can still cut vines, or they can still drag bushes out of there. Make sure you have the right tools. If you have weed wrenches or uprooters or different tools, make sure you have plenty of them for your volunteers, or ask them to bring their own. Make sure that you teach the volunteers on the site, or the crew leaders, how to teach the volunteers how to identify the good plants from the bad plants. We don't want a group of 100 volunteers going out to the zoo and controlling sumac, which is native here, when they were supposed to be controlling ailanthus. Do a really quick and easy training on the day of the event, and they'll know the difference, because you're really only dealing with a few plants on each site. A lot of folks wouldn't know that that's not ailanthus, but we want to teach them the simple basics of plant identification. And if they just touch this plant, they would know it's ailanthus. But this time of year, it's a different story because you're dealing with bark. But training is really important. Make sure they know, I'm just showing different plants and different leaves, but porcelain berry versus grapevine. Porcelain berry's on the left, grapevine's on the right. Porcelain berry's on the bottom, grapevine's on the top. But that gives you an idea of some of the plants and some of the lookalikes you need to be aware of to teach your volunteers. You can also show them some good before and after pictures during the training that you're having. Make sure during the training you're talking about the levels of infestation. How's it going to affect the method you use? You want to make sure you're doing more like level 1, 2, and 3, or low to medium intensity infestations. You don't want to have them go out and control a field full of Sericea lespedeza. They just can't do it. You can't pull that out of the ground. There's not much you can do with it. If that's the problem you have, you want to find a different way to control that, and look for other species that are good for volunteers. Bush honeysuckle is great for volunteers. You can see the euonymus growing in the trees behind them. This is just an AmeriCorps crew that came out and worked for a couple hours with Maddox and uprooted basically all the bush honeysuckle you can see in the picture, the before and after. This was a good site for a volunteer group. this would be a bad site for a volunteer crew. Don't use privet that's growing like this because they won't get anything done. This is a better site for professionals to get in and work on. But if privet's growing like this on the left in the before picture, they can make it look like this in the after picture. And it's really important during these events, these volunteer events that you're going to have, that you pick sites where when they're finished at the end of the day, they can see their accomplishment. They can feel like they've done something and they want to come back. So level 3 or less of multi-stem species are always good. Maybe you're in a state, or maybe you're in Canada, maybe you have something out in Seattle where you have garlic mustard or English ivy or some species like that. Pick something that they can use their hands with and bring hands tools to use. Okay, so the next step, we've got our partners, we've got trained them, we've figured out what they need to do. One thing we did within this group, I probably should have put this slide earlier, is consider hiring a coordinator or a consultant. In this case, they asked me in invasive plant control to get involved. If you're able to do that, I think it helps. You should be able to find, you can call me and we'll help you anywhere in the country, but you should be able to find plenty of people around that are willing to help on this and take you through the different steps. At that point, it was, we needed to also choose a date for the Weed Wrangle event, or events in this case. Some of the sites like the Nashville Zoo are already going to be doing 2 or 3 of these a year because they see the benefit of this, of what we're doing, and they can really see how this could help them get rid of their invasives. But you don't have to do it during Weed Awareness Week. I've gotten a few calls and emails from folks that want to do this, but say they're in Wisconsin or Michigan, and it's no longer a good time to have volunteers out, or it's not time yet at all. Maybe the snow's on the ground, they can't get out and do the plant they want to do. We're doing it during Weed Awareness Week or Invasive Species Awareness Week because we find that we can really get some good partners during that time. But we're also far enough south where we think we can have good days to get on the ground and do the pull part without really dealing with too much weather. We might be wrong this year, but I think we'll be okay. So just pick the season that lends best to you guys and to your sites and how you can educate the public and improve their participation. It does benefit, I think, to help to hold this during the school year if at all possible, because you can get a lot more students involved as well. And partner with other like-minded events. So if you have an invasive plant council meeting in your state and it's in October, maybe October is the time to do it, and you can make this part of the pre-conference work that you guys have. And from that point forward, it's just time to implement the plan. So, when I look back and I thought about what the Weed Wrangle in this case was going to do and the template we're trying to build, we really are doing a lot of education. The education in turn is providing prevention education for the people that we're speaking with and we're bringing into this. We're doing a little bit of early detection because we're out there looking at things and we're going to be training people in how to do early detection while we're on these different sites. Another part of what we're doing is some of the partnerships with the parks where we're training crew leaders. And with that crew leader training, those crew leaders could then become Weed Wrangle crew leaders from year to year. And of course, our emphasis in this case for the Weed Wrangle is doing the control efforts, and then we'll be able to do monitoring and research afterwards. So now we're ready to do the work. We're out on the site. This is going to be coming up on Saturday. We really wanted to consider while we're doing the planning, what are the site-specific issues? Nashville Zoo has animal exhibits. The botanical gardens obviously has the native and the non-natives there, and how are we going to work that out? How are we going to teach the public and try to have a unified effort here? Warner Parks, which is just a beautiful park, but it has 3,000 acres, and there's a lot of invasives in this park. Radnor Lake is different. They have work days all the time, so how are we going to integrate that? So going site by site, we had to decide what's the best way to do this. One of the really neat examples is the Nashville Zoo at Grassmere. It's hard to read this. It's kind of small on this, but I'll show you some other pictures. But right now, they're in the middle of building a native North American wildlife exhibit. They're going to be planting native meadows. They're going to be planting different zones with native meadows, and you can kind of see the layout here, how it's going to be. So this area on the bottom left is what that plan is going, eventually this is the area where that's going to be. And you can see the top left is what it started out at earlier this year. Just level 5, high intensity, bush honeysuckle, privet. There are basically 15 or 20 invasives in there and very little of other things. But they're going to convert this now and see the work that they were doing, cutting and treating. They had to go in here, by the way, and cut and treat this entire acreage by hand. There was no bringing in big machines. It's a water the area here where they weren't allowed to bring any large equipment in. So this is just the first step of this North American Wildlife Plan. So for the weed wrangle, it works really well because this elk and bison exhibit, the water quality infiltration berms, all the different things that you see here, kind of the light green right in the center there, and the elk and bison overflow grazing, those are the areas we've been working. And they were just full of all those invasives. So the volunteers that are going to come in are going to be able to see a lot of the native plants, or be told about a lot of the native plants that are going in there, the conversion of this site, and they're actually going to be able to be a part of the restoration of part of their zoo. So they're going to have a real first-hand experience and hopefully want to come back from year to year and see the difference that's made. So they're going to go in there and actually pull out all the bush honeysuckle and privet that's piled along the edges, take it off to a site where it can be hauled away, and then go back in that initial site I showed you being controlled and hand pull a lot of the little privets that are in there. So they're going to have a real hands-on experience, and then at the end of that pull on Saturday, they're going to go enjoy the zoo, and hopefully for years to come, when that exhibit is complete, they're going to remember that they had played a part in building that. Just some more of the designs and the plants that they're putting back in: serviceberry, river cane, flowering dogwood, eastern redbud, after all that stuff comes out. So Lipscomb, I already talked a little bit about that. I just think we've got the zoo, we've got a lot of visitors that come there, we've got Lipscomb Academy. It's not just I believe the university is involved as well, but the middle school, getting them involved is great, and having more than 100 students come out to work on that site, on 3 different restoration sites there, where they're not only taking out the bad guys, but they're putting in, restoring with new native plants as well. So they're actually going through the whole process as well. And then you have to think about other places like Radnor Lake. The different partners are going to have different needs for the volunteers. So as you're building your weed wrangle and you're building your event, make sure you're able to find the right tasks in the right places, that for only a 3-hour period, understanding that this is a big part of this is education. The control you're going to get is minimal, but it's going to be a lot depending on the numbers that are there, but you're going to get a lot of education out of it. Radnor Lake, they have a lot of work they've been doing over the years, this state park in Tennessee. You can see where they've cut and treated a lot of bush honeysuckle. So the volunteers will be hauling a lot of the bush honeysuckle into piles, eventually maybe burning that. You can see Radnor Lake here where they've done some of the cutting work. You can see some of the volunteers working, getting some of the stuff away from the edges. And you can see some of the work they've already done and some of the stuff that they're going to be able to show their volunteers, their successes very clearly when you look at the before and the after type photos. So that's really quickly kind of goes through a nice little template of how to set up your weed wrangle, how to set up your community event to bring people together to do this weed pull, to not just make it about the pull, but also to make it about fun and exciting and everything. But to really be successful, you need to kind of figure out how are we going to get this word out to Nashville? How are we going to get it out to our community? So, you know, I say take photos here, but going back to my art over argument thought in the very beginning, let's think about all the different options you have in your area for getting people involved. Is it painting? Is it publishing? Is it photography? Is it television? What are we going to do to make that work? You know, here we go. Not everybody trusts painting, but people believe in photographs. Ansel Adams. Take photographs while you're out on the site. Show people the before and afters. If you didn't believe that anacondas could do this, they can. And it's something that when you're on your site, you might not show something that dramatic, but you're going to be able to see things. There's a group here, I believe, called the Chestnut Society. One of our thoughts was to have them out on the sites making painting for the sites so that we actually have some nice archived paintings from all the different work sites from year to year that could be used for fundraisers or other things. They just make beautiful art paintings around Nashville, nature art. Also, as part of that $6,000, they hired Boulevard Communications, and Alan Bostic has been helping us. So he's gone out and done a ton of getting us on television. So we'll be on the Volunteer Gardener on PBS here. We'll probably be on the radio and all the local newspapers and magazines. He's been putting the word out. So people are getting a feel for it in Nashville. And I think with this cold weather we've had, it might be actually a good thing because people are going to be ready to get outside next week if it's above freezing. But having them involved, I think, has been well worth the investment. So all that put together, we're hoping to put together this Weed Wrangle guidebook. So another thing that Casey and Elizabeth were talking about was taking all this information, similar to what you see with the CWMA guidebook, except in this case it would be for the weed wrangle, put together a guidebook so that other communities can implement this. This presentation just kind of highlights some of that format, but it would be a little more involved in the guidebook. And then we want to encourage groups like yourself to get out there, do the weed wrangle, get the community involved, look at the CWMA or the CISMA, SISMA format, and consider devising a cooperative weed management area in your area. I think once you do a little research on those and understand what they are, you'll see that they can be very beneficial in moving this issue forward in your community. So what are we going to be doing next? We're considering expansion for 2016 in terms of some of the garden club members from different cities might get involved. Maybe we can get the ones that were in Pittsburgh to get their garden club involved. Maybe Rochester, maybe Seattle area. Other surrounding communities around Nashville have asked to get involved. So just getting the word out there, you can really see people are excited about the idea of having some type of tool that they can jump into and use to do something about invasives. There's my list. I put 15 there. Your list might have 20. It might have 10. But I think if you follow this list, you'll be able to get a good start. Now, I'll put this up online. I am recording this webinar right now, so that'll all be on our website afterwards, and you can take a look at it. So, with that said, again, give me a call, shoot me an email whenever you want to. I'd love to help you guys through this process, and I know the folks at the Garden Club here would as well. So, I'm going to now see if I've got any questions that were typed in. So, do you have any suggestions for establishing that initial invasive species awareness in a low-income community that may not be as educated in natural resources areas or may not consider them a high priority? I think that's a great question. One of the things we did once, I believe it was actually in Pittsburgh, was go around and just look at some of the, you might call them lower-income communities, or it's just areas that haven't been kept up in a long time. And one thing you see is that most of the green space, even if it's very small, is full of invasive plants just because it's not kept up very well. So I think there's actually more opportunities in those areas than in others to get grants and to find funds to do this. And I would encourage you, I think it's Darcy who wrote that question, to give me a call afterwards, and we can kind of talk through some of the grant opportunities that would be available for someone like yourself in an area like that. But I think it's really important because the seed source that comes out of those areas is pretty big, because the plants oftentimes don't get taken care of as often there, so the seeds just grow, the plants grow, the seeds are distributed a lot more. So, let's see, who's funding the exhibit at the Nashville Zoo? They're taking their volunteer coordinator there and their marketing people, and they're all in on this. So they're not, I can't say how they're internally funding it other than it's all a volunteer event. So the Garden Club of Nashville will have a representative at each site helping with the registration, helping people out there. We'll also have other people. I'll be at the Nashville Zoo as well, and we'll be helping them get the volunteers organized and everything going. So honestly, the funding is more of a, it's really more of a volunteer event at that point. It's just part of the people's jobs that are taking this on. So I think that's all the questions I can see right now. I really appreciate everyone showing up today, and really do encourage you to give me a call or shoot me an email, and let's talk about what you might be able to do in your community. And also encourage you to look up the Invasive Species Awareness Week stuff and jump on some of the other webinars. There's a lot of good ones this week. So thank you, everyone.